she was a little apprehensive, but she has a reputation for being pretty feisty, very confident. Prince George may be the eldest child, but I think it's Charlotte who calls the shots and has everyone running rings around her.
An unprecedented scandal has just erupted in the dead of night during a royal diplomatic banquet. The epicenter of the crisis is not a politician, but 9-year-old Princess Charlotte and her sapphire necklace, a priceless heirloom from the late Princess Diana. The public is reeling from reports that Queen Camilla orchestrated a ruse to lure Princess Kate away, only to corner and scratch the child's neck in a desperate attempt to seize the jewelry behind a secluded corridor. The foul act seemed destined to be whitewashed when all security footage was incinerated. Camilla brazenly took the stage, playing the victim while triumphantly slandering the child as a thief. Little did she know, her cruel crime was being shadowed by a loyal captain of the guard, who silently captured every second via a micro-intelligence camera hidden beneath his uniform button. As the truth-revealing video played directly onto the big screens before hundreds of guests, the British throne was shaken to its core. Will King Charles dare to personally strip his wife of her crown to protect Diana's bloodline? And what brutal punishment awaits the traitor now that her mask of power has been torn away in the most humiliating fashion? The event unfolded at the heart of the year's grandest diplomatic gala. Hundreds of guests drifted through the Great Hall, crystal flutes filled with champagne passing from hand to hand. In the right corner of the room, Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood beside her daughter, Princess Charlotte. The 9-year-old wore a piece around her neck that transcended material value, the sapphire necklace. It was the final heirloom left by Princess Diana, a deep blue gem, exquisitely cut, resting quietly against Charlotte's small chest. From across the hall, Camilla's eyes were locked onto the sapphire. She stood surrounded by sycophants, but her mind was fixed solely on the item around the child's neck. Her manicured nails dug into the edge of a marble table. The necklace's presence felt like a direct challenge, a slap to the very crown she wore. Camilla signaled with her hand. An invisible nod was exchanged. From the crowd, an attendant carrying a silver tray navigated through the guests. Moving with calculated steps, he closed in on Catherine's position. Just as Catherine turned to set her glass down, the attendant brushed past, surreptitiously slipping a four-folded note into her hand. Catherine opened the paper. Inside was a hurried handwritten line, accompanied by dark red smudges that looked like blood. William accident. Heavy bleeding. Parking basement level 3. Come down now. Catherine's eyes widened. She crushed the note in her hand. The instinct of a wife and mother overrode all caution. She dropped her beaded clutch to the floor, oblivious as it rolled under the guest's feet. Hoisting the front of her evening gown, Catherine turned and ran straight through the great doors toward the stairs leading to the parking garage. Charlotte was left alone. The child looked around in confusion, searching for her mother. Waiting for that exact moment, Camilla struck. She took long, purposeful strides across the hall. 2 bodyguards in black, men paid directly from her private funds, immediately stepped forward, forming a line to block the view of surrounding guests. They created a wall of flesh, completely isolating the corner of the room. Camilla backed Charlotte behind a massive velvet curtain. The dense shadows behind the heavy fabric swallowed them both. The 9-year-old cowered, her small shoulders trembling as Camilla's shadow loomed over her. She didn't mince words. Camilla glared straight into Charlotte's face, her lips pressed thin. She pinned the child into the corner, hissing words with a breath of pure hostility, demanding the child curtsy. But it was a foul pretext. As Charlotte fearfully bowed her head, Camilla's hand swung up. Her nails, sharp as a hawk's talons, reached straight for the child's neck. Camilla aimed for the sapphire pendant. She gripped the setting and yanked it toward her. Charlotte jolted. The metal chain cut deep into her flesh, creating a long scratch that welled with bright red blood. Despite the pain, the 9-year-old fought back with primal instinct. Charlotte brought both hands up, clutching the sapphire tightly to her chest, refusing to let go. She pressed herself into the wall, bracing her body to hold on to her grandmother's keepsake. Camilla was livid. Greed and jealousy turned her into a mad woman. Using the strength of a grown woman, she continued to claw at the back of Charlotte's hands, trying to pry the small fingers open to seize the prize. The necklace strained, the scratch on the child's neck bled more freely, staining the white lace of her collar. Just as Camilla's hand was about to snap the chain, a large arm clad in a white glove appeared out of nowhere. Captain Blake, a high-ranking royal guard, flung Camilla's arm away with brutal force. The shove was so powerful that Camilla lost her balance, staggering back until her spine hit the edge of a wooden table. Blake didn't say a word. He reached out, scooping Charlotte up with one arm. He used his massive frame to completely shield the child from her assailant. His eyes caught the bright red blood seeping from Charlotte's neck and onto her collar. Blake's face hardened, cold and murderous. Camilla steadied herself, her face contorted with rage. She swung her arm, aiming a slap directly at Blake's face. But the guard didn't flinch. He stepped back half a pace, dodging the blow effortlessly, his icy gaze pinning the woman down. There was no submission. Blake turned, holding Charlotte tight, and strode away from the secluded corner, leaving Camilla gasping for breath. At the same time, in parking basement level 3, Catherine was running for her life. She kicked open the fire door and burst into the silent parking area. Her eyes fell on William standing by an SUV, phone in hand, his suit perfectly pressed without a single scratch. Catherine froze. She opened her palm and stared at the red-stained paper. She wiped it with her finger. The smell of chemical dye hit her nose. It wasn't blood. It was a trap. Panic instantly transformed into sheer fury. Catherine gripped the paper, crushing it. William hung up the phone. Seeing his wife's face, he understood immediately. He snatched the paper from her, his gaze darkening. They both raced back up the stairs and burst into the great hall. The moment they cleared the doors, they collided with Blake carrying Charlotte. Seeing the blood on his daughter's neck and the terror in her eyes, William gritted his teeth. His hands clenched into fists. William didn't ask questions. He turned to Blake and jerked his head toward the hallway. Blake gave a slight nod. William moved like a whirlwind, heading straight for the palace's central security hub, followed by Blake and Catherine, who was now holding Charlotte close. William kicked open the security room door. 4 duty officers stood up, faces pale. He wasted no time, going straight to the server system. But he was one step too late. The monitors displaying the Great Hall were now nothing but black squares. The server hard drive racks had been pried open, the metal covers discarded on the floor. In the corner, a specialized metal bin used for destroying documents was billowing black smoke. Inside, magnetic tapes and circuit boards had been smashed, doused in chemicals, and completely incinerated. The acrid smell of burnt plastic filled the room. The culprit had moved too fast. Every shred of evidence from the building's security cameras had been professionally wiped. Out in the hall, Camilla had regained her composure. She smoothed her dress and took a glass of wine from an attendant. She stood amidst the crowd, smiling smugly, confident that all traces had been burned in the basement. She believed she could easily blame the mishap on a child's clumsiness. In the security room, the air was thick with helplessness. Catherine held Charlotte tight, using a tissue to wipe the blood from her daughter's neck. William slammed his fist onto the control desk, rattling the monitor system. They had no proof, no physical evidence. That was when Captain Blake stepped forward. He stood before William. Without a word, Blake raised his right hand to his left chest. He touched the second brass button on his ceremonial uniform. With a counterclockwise twist, the surface of the button popped open. Inside the core of the brass button sat a micro-intelligence camera lens, accompanied by a micro SD card slot. Using his fingernail, Blake carefully extracted the black memory card. He placed it on the metal table and slid it toward William. The VIP protection protocol of the Intelligence Bureau, something Camilla never expected, had been silently recording the entire time Blake followed to protect Charlotte. William's eyes lit up. He seized the memory card. The coup was ready. The diplomatic banquet moved into its most important formal segment. All guests were asked to gather at the center of the hall. Camilla stepped onto the podium. She stood under the bright spotlights, the crown on her head sparkling with blinding reflections. Below, hundreds of pairs of eyes from high-ranking officials were fixed upon her. Camilla gripped the microphone with both hands. She began her performance. Her face crinkled as she forced out fake tears. In a choked, dramatic voice, she announced a regrettable incident. She slandered Princess Charlotte with unacceptable behavior. She fabricated a story that the child had taken advantage of an unobserved moment to steal a diamond bracelet from a guest and, when caught, had scratched her own neck to play the victim. Camilla pointed directly at Catherine and Charlotte in the front row, demanding the guards immediately search the child for the stolen goods. The crowd began to whisper. Suspicious glances fell upon the Wales family. Camilla smirked, savoring the moment of public humiliation. She was certain she held the upper hand. William stood silently beside his wife. He did not speak up to defend her. Instead, he raised his left hand and tapped his index finger twice on the face of his wristwatch. That was the signal. Instantly, the entire electrical system of the Great Hall was cut. Dozens of crystal chandeliers went dark simultaneously. Thick darkness fell over the massive room. The crowd gasped in alarm. 3 seconds later, a powerful beam of light shot out from the technical booth on the mezzanine, hitting the massive projector screen located directly behind Camilla's podium. The screen flared to life. It wasn't the blurry images of ceiling-mounted security cameras. It was a high-definition video, a close-up angle, sharp to every pixel, recorded directly from Captain Blake's chest. Without a single edit, the naked truth hit the eyes of hundreds. On the giant screen, Camilla's face appeared, shriveled and completely distorted by greed. The image was so clear one could see the blue veins popping on her neck. The video showed Camilla's claw-like nails aggressively scratching and pressing into Charlotte's neck, trying to rip away the sapphire necklace. It didn't stop there. The audio captured from the hidden microphone thundered through the hall's central speakers. Camilla's voice, no longer the fake choked tone from moments ago, was a shrill, venomous hiss filled with hatred. "Give it to me! You don't deserve to keep that woman's things!" Every sound, every wheezing breath, the snap of the strained chain, and the image of the bright red blood seeping onto the 9-year-old's neck looped repeatedly on the big screen. The entire hall fell into a deathly silence. The air turned heavy. Hundreds of diplomats, seasoned politicians, all stood with their mouths agape in shock. They had witnessed the lowliest of crimes exposed in the very sanctuary of nobility. Camilla stood frozen on the podium. Her entire body went stiff. She slowly turned her head, her eyes wide with horror, as she looked at the screen behind her, where her own monstrous face was magnified hundreds of times. The champagne glass in her hand slipped from her trembling fingers. It fell freely to the stone floor. The crash was the only sound in the silent room. The glass shattered into hundreds of sharp shards at Camilla's feet, signaling the total annihilation of every bit of power and honor she had worked so hard to steal. The crowd parted automatically, creating a straight path. King Charles stepped forward from the front row. His face was set, cold as an iceberg. There was no hint of grief or hesitation. This public humiliation had surpassed a king's limit of endurance. He took long strides, stepping directly onto the shattered glass, and walked onto the podium. Charles reached out and snatched the microphone from Camilla's trembling hands. He didn't even look at her. With a sharp flick of his chin, Charles signaled the royal guard. 4 large guards in scarlet uniforms immediately emerged from the shadows. 2 of them seized the attendant who had delivered the fake note, twisting his arms behind his back and forcing his face down onto the cold stone floor. Charles slowly turned to face the woman who had been by his side for decades. Camilla opened her mouth, trying to utter weak justifications, her eyes flooded with sheer panic. But Charles gave her no chance. He reached out with both hands. With a violent, decisive, and merciless motion, Charles gripped the sparkling tiara resting on Camilla's head and yanked it straight off her elaborately styled hair. The bobby pins snapped, pulling loose strands of hair down over her ashen face. The act of stripping the crown happened publicly and brutally before hundreds of eyes and dozens of phone cameras. Without a trial, without a formal decree of removal, Camilla's authority was stripped bare on the spot. Camilla screamed, losing control. She reached into the air, trying to grab back the piece of power now held firmly in Charles's hand. But he coldly shoved her hands away. The other 2 guards stepped up. They twisted Camilla's arms behind her back, locking her down. There was no gentleness, no deference. They dragged her off the podium and through the dark corridors toward the palace's rear exit. Camilla's screams grew faint and then died out as the heavy oak doors slammed shut. Outside, a black armored SUV was already idling. The guards stripped every diamond bracelet, necklace, and ring from her body, tossing them into a steel box. Camilla was shoved roughly into the back seat. The door slammed shut and locked. The car sped off into the dark night, carrying the culprit into exile at a desolate, isolated estate on the Scottish border, permanently cutting off all contact with the outside world. Her career and ambitions ended in the most wretched disgrace. The next morning, the London sky was sunny and clear. On the lawn in front of the Royal Chapel, a private memorial service took place. Princess Charlotte stood in the front row, her head held high with pride. On her small chest, the sapphire necklace glowed brilliantly under the sun, the scratch on her neck carefully bandaged, a testament to her resilience in protecting a legacy. On the other side of the grass, William stood facing Captain Blake. There were no media lenses, no flowery speeches. William held a silver star of gallantry medal. He personally pinned it to the left chest of Blake's uniform, exactly where the button had been that saved a dynasty. William gave the guard's shoulder a firm pat. Blake stood at attention, his gaze steady. He hadn't just crushed a cowardly plot, he had fulfilled the blood oath of his father years prior, to be the strongest shield protecting the legacy and the bloodline of Princess Diana until his final breath. The villain had lost everything. Justice was served with the most brutal and fair retribution. However, the bleeding scratch on the 9-year-old's neck will still leave a scar. Victory has come, but the fracture of trust and kinship within the royal family has cracked beyond repair. A battle has ended, but the shadows of new conspiracies always linger behind the eternal marble walls. In your opinion, for a woman who spent more than half her life using every trick to climb to the throne like Camilla, will she accept rotting away in a cold, abandoned house in Scotland? Or is she silently brewing a fatal retaliatory strike from the shadows? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.